Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. It's Fixed Blade Friday and we've got a big blade. It comes with a pretty good sheath. So it's got a, put it this side, we've got a nice belt on it. And this is an upgrade. I don't know if you first looked at the Drop Forged Survivalist by Cold Steel when it first came out years ago. But then there was two major complaints. It was too heavy in the handle and it wasn't a good enough grip in the handle, and they've addressed both of those on this. This isn't new for 2021, not by any stretch, but this is the upgrade of it. I first looked at the Drop Forge series, the monolithic series, mono meaning one, so this is one piece of steel, the whole thing. There's no seams, no welds, no joints. For that series of knives, I always thought they were kind of cool, and I've never got any one of them to look at. And, where I live in rural Alberta, I don't get to see an awful lot of knives. But someone I know had one of these, and I took a look at it, and his was the original one. And I decided when I bought all those cold steel folding knives a few months ago, I decided to get this as well. I'm not going to show you footage of me chopping with it and cutting with it. I don't do cutting stuff in my videos. Plus, I'm in pretty bad shape right now. I've had extreme pain in my knees and stuff. I can't even walk the dog right now. So I didn't record any footage of that, but I want to show you this knife now, and it's time to do another fixed blade. So you can watch other reviews of this thing. It's the same steel in those videos, and people do huge abusive tests on these things. So you can see what they're like if you watch those videos for how well they perform. I'm just going to give you the specs and how well it did with cardboard stuff inside the house. I've got a 2x4 in the house too that I did a little chopping with on this too. So we'll say how good this held up and give you all the specs and info on it. Keep watching. So let's take a good close look at this thing. What we have is a full flat grind, and then we've got sort of a scoop bevel here instead of a step bevel. Decent sized sharpener's choil. They sharpen just a little bit up the plunge on this side, and on this side they sharpened about half of the way up the plunge there. That's pretty common for this type of thing. We've got a clip point here with a swedge that starts about 1.5 inches behind where the clip starts. Gives it a nice look. Helps it perform well as a piercing knife. I did a little bit of testing where I plunged it into some spruce and then pried it out. I'm not a destructive tester. Anything can break if you push it too far. I'm not for finding the absolute limits of things. There's enough YouTubers doing that. I test I try to be real world testing. How am I going to use this knife? Can it do what I would expect it to do? And so, yeah, doing some tip work in some softwood, not a problem. We've got a fairly shallow belly that takes up about half the blade, and then the other half of the blade is a straight edge. The full flat grind, well, actually the entire thing has got a coating on it. It's a more gray coating than the original version of this knife had, but they are still calling it a Teflon coating. So some kind of Teflon coating. Is it durable? Well, not really. You can see some of the wear points here and here. I didn't even do that awful much batoning or chopping. The chopping didn't do any kind of damage except for right very near the sharpening bevel. But up here, this was all just done in some batoning. And of course, wood's it's a pinch point and it's gonna rub any coated surface off, unless it's an extremely good coated surface. And no, this is just a decent coated surface. Well, let's talk about why it needs that coated surface. This steel is 52-100. It's like 5160 that's been upgraded with more carbon. This is actually, it's not only a high carbon steel, it's a high carbon steel. The carbides in here aren't too terribly large, but you can get some chipping on this because the Rockwell hardness on this can go all the way up to 66. Some sources claim that it's usually 64 to 66 in the Rockwell hardness, and I haven't sharpened it yet, but I'll add a piece of video hopefully right now. Okay, here we are with the knife sharpened, and yeah, it's a very hard steel. Certainly above 62 on the Rockwell hardness. I could just feel it. I was sharpening with my diamond stones, and yeah, they had a tough time. I barely took any steel off. This side did have a little more steel removed than this side, and so that the edge is not exactly running right down the middle. It's a little bit off from one side to the other. Not a big deal. We'll talk some more about the grinding and stuff, but basically it's a straight parallel. The belly and the spine go parallel, and then you get a clip and a belly up to get to that nice point on the blade. Now for the handle, we'll do the sizes and stuff in just a little while, but the handle, this is drop forged, so it's one piece of steel throughout, and put in a guard. I don't think it needed to be quite that big. They could have saved some weight on this knife if they would have made it a little bit smaller. If somebody expects to use this as a fighting knife, and the person you're fighting against also has a knife, then of course the guards come in handy. But in other conditions, other than fighting somebody, you really don't need this much of a guard. And that's, like I said, it could have saved them some weight. Everything is nice and smooth. There's no sharp edges anywhere in here on the handle. We've got a nice sort of belly on the handle, and then we've got a little bit of a belly on the handle sideways. Not much. It's fairly parallel, but it comes out a little bit. And then at the back here, there's a lanyard hole. Perfect placement for a lanyard hole. I didn't test it with a lanyard. I just did some basic testing, bare-handed testing, and I'll give you those results in just a little while. But the handle is good. I really think that this plastic that they put in here, I think it's fiber reinforced. We'll test it. It's very textured, very grippy. T10 screws, I measured that already. And if you just grab the knife, it's a very solid grip. I might have thought that the first version that they made before they put in these grips, if they would have added some jimping on the spine and on the belly here, not aggressive jimping, but just a change in texture, that would have helped people with the grip there. And I have to wonder if, this is definitely an upgrade, but I have to wonder if it'd be even better if they'd add a little bit of that on the spine and the belly. That would make this a very comfortable and secure grip. It's pretty secure the way it is, but actually, before we talk about the problems, I did notice a tiny defect in the finish right there on the handle, and you'll see a close-up of that. Everywhere else, it looks like the finish of this coating has been done very, very well. They could have done larger writing on this knife. I'm glad that the size of the cold steel and the steel type here, made in Taiwan, I don't expect it to be too much smaller than that. This could have been just a little bit smaller. Drop forged Survivalist. I did some chop testing because I wanted to see, just barehanded, if I grab this knife, how long can I stand it just chopping? And does anything start to hurt if I'm chopping this way? Well, yes, I found I had two issues. One issue is right here, off your big knuckle on, sort of on the side there. The roughness of this started to bother me. And with that bone very close to the surface right there, my knuckle started getting irritated as well. Like the joint started getting some pain. And then the same thing on the other side, it was, the main knuckle of my thumb and then up along the inside of my thumb, rubbing back and forth. I think the texture is supposed to be like chagrin. I think that's the right word for it. Shark skin. Shark skin's very abrasive. I think it's supposed to sort of represent that kind of surface. I wish that from this screw forward, they would have made that smoother. That's easy to do after the fact, and just some sandpaper and you could smooth up that surface there if you find the same thing happening to you. The flare on the back of the handle, when I was reaching back like this and then doing my chopping, this isn't quite big enough to be good barehanded, or if it had a little bit of jimping back here, that might have stopped my hand from wanting to climb off. It never slipped. It never felt like I was going to drop the knife or throw the knife. Nothing as exceeding as that. Just a little extra movement. I just wish this was a tiny bit bigger back here. Now it's time to take these handle scales off and take a look inside there. So here we are. I've taken off the handle grips. These are, just some kind of fairly high-grade plastic. It's pretty strong, very good construction in there on the shape to keep it strong. They could have just done half as many of these crossing pieces and it might last, but they did this right. Nice and thick all the way through. These holes and the pins for them, they are D-shaped, so that's quite good. So I think one side has been Loctited in because one side didn't want to turn and the other two did want to turn, although they also have some kind of Loctite. But on the one side, they were easier to take out than on the other side. So this is definitely an upgrade from the original Survivalist, Drop Forge Survivalist. 2 reasons. You've got better grip and you've got less weight in the handle. Before, the handle was a little bit too heavy. So I did a little test when I had it apart. I took a knife and I cut some of the plastic a little bit, as you can see right there. And yes, it feels very different from cutting other plastics, heavy plastics. I'm totally convinced this is fiber reinforced plastic, which FRN, I've cut FRN before and it feels very much the same. I could feel the knife going in very, very tiny little movements, and that's because it's cutting through fibers as it's going through there. So it's got a very, very tiny bit of sacrificial damage there so that I could confirm what the material is. Most websites that have this don't even say at all what the handle material is, and so this is some kind of FRN. Well, it might not be nylon. It might be a fiber reinforced polypropylene or polyethylene. I don't know. It's some kind of fiber reinforced plastic of some type. And now you've already been waiting for this, haven't you? What about this sheath? Well, it's SecureX. I wonder if they use the same plastic, that this is basically SecureX as well, the same material. It could be just a different finish and color. But this is a nice long sheath. You've got these notches here so that you could use this with a molly system and tie it onto a bag or whatever. The belt loop here is a nice heavy belt. It's a little bit like seatbelt material. Actually, let's move this and get the gray on the background now. That might work a little bit better with this black. So, yeah, pretty good. We've got a cross piece sewn on here, and that's to wrap around the handle. But this loop, you can take it on and off without taking your belt all the way off. It's a little tricky weaving this under your belt on certain belts to get your belt in between, and then you fold it down, and between the Velcro and the snap, that holds it. Works very, very well. I found it just a whole lot easier to weave my belt through here than it was to try to tuck this underneath sometimes. Now let's see. Oh, if we look at this, there's probably can't see it. There's a tiny little drainage hole right here. So if you do get rain in here, it's going to drain out. Now let's put the knife inside. There's a click. Holds it quite well. Let's stop this from making part of the noise. So yeah, there is some freedom in there because, there's a fulcrum right here in the middle of its weight, and so it will bounce back and forth. other than that, it holds very well. You know, upside down, it didn't come out. Theoretically, you've got 4 different positions that you could put this on to adjust how high it is on your waist. So I like this sheath. It's well done. It's a good budget sheath. Let's go over the prices. You can order this right now directly from Cold Steel for $99 US. So that's the base price. Do not pay more than $99 US for this knife. You're just being totally ripped off if you do. In other words, if you buy it in Canada, it costs more than $99 US when you buy it in Canada. Just a little bit more, not by an awful lot, but it is. I got mine from White Mountain Knives. White Mountain Knives carries this at $82.99 US. They don't have it in stock right now. You click on the address bar, you put in your address, not the address bar, you click, there's a place to put your email address, you click notify me, you will get an email when it's back in stock, and then you save 10% when you use my coupon code CCE, and that makes the price $74.69 after the 10% discount. $74.69 is right around 94 Canadian dollars. The cheapest place I could find it in Canada is at Blades Canada, also known as Warriors and Wonders. They're charging 115 Canadian for this knife. Other places are over, like I saw one place, $219 in Canada for this. It's not on Amazon.ca right now. You can also get it on Amazon.com for $87.14. So it's about $5 more than it is at White Mountain Knives. Let's take the time to do the sizes, dimensions, all that kind of stuff. This thing weighs 389 grams, 13.75 ounces. Yes, it is not a light knife. The weight of the sheath is 121 grams, 4.25 ounces. That equals 510 grams and 18 ounces. I think it's worth the wait. Dimensions. The length of the cutting edge is 198.2 millimeters, 7.8 inches on this knife. I'm not going to say what the blade length is because where do I measure it here? Because even that part where it meets, it's a radius where the guard and the blade meet. So we're just going to say 8-inch blade. The depth of the blade, it's pretty much parallel. So here's the depth of the blade, 38.4 millimeters, which is 1.51 inches. The blade thickness, and I measured it over the logo. So how thick is the spine right there? Because there's different layers in here. So right over those logos is where I measured the thickness. 5.54 millimeters. That's 0.218 of an inch. So well over 2/10 of an inch, just a little bit under 1/4 of an inch. It's got the full flat grind, so it's getting thinner right away. So that helps it an awful lot. The grind angles. The grind angles are 13.5 degrees per side. Which side is it? This side, it's very consistent. Within, 0.2, 0.3 of a degree, it's a well-sharpened side here. This side, he or she was a little more wiggly, but it was between 13 and 14 degrees. But repeatedly, it would come to 13.5 degrees. At 3 different points, it was 13.5 degrees. So we'll say 13.5 per side. It didn't take too much damage, tiny bit of defects on the edge from chopping into some hardwood. This is my very first knife with this steel, and I was not expecting it to perform that well. I was testing with it before I looked it up and found out how hard it could be. The handle now. I'm not going to really say how long the handle is for the same reason that I don't know how long the blade is, but we're going to say that the grip length is right around 11 centimeters, about 4.25 inches. So you can put some very wide hands in here. The handle thickness is 21.6 millimeters. That's 0.85 of an inch. The handle depth this way within the grip area is right here, 34.8 millimeters, which is 1.37 inches. And my hands fit in here very, very well. My hands are right between large and extra large in the North American men's glove sizes. And I've got extra room. So people who've got extra large hands, or well within the extra large, big sausage fingers, you still got room in here. The entire length of this knife is 331 millimeters, which is 13.03 inches. The thickness behind the grind, here just a little bit behind the tip, 0.99 millimeters, which is 39 thousandths. In the middle of the knife here, it was 0.81 millimeters, 32 thousandths. And here at the heel, it was 0.85 millimeters, which is 33.5 thousandths. It's a little thicker behind the grind, and maybe that's how it could handle that grind angle, because, you know, it had thickness coming up behind it right away. We'll see. I do want to sharpen it so that I can see what this steel feels like as I'm sharpening it. And read the text on the screen now. I'll talk about what it felt like. Coating is decent. It's not that super durable, but it's decent. The grip is decent. It's better than the original, I'm sure. You know, just a little bit of change with the grip there. Maybe if there was some jimping in here. But overall, I really like this knife. It's worth the price that you are charged to get it, because this has very little chromium in it. It's not even close to being a D2 level of corrosion resistance. If you need something big, and you know you're going to need something big without being super enormous, this is a good choice. The Drop Forged Survivalist by Cold Steel. Thanks for watching my video. Thanks for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. And remember, friends, chop towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.